día de mi vida. Amé mucho una mujer de mi alma la más querida. Me traicionó la perdida, caramba, qué ingrato y mal proceder. Ella me hizo beber, ella me hizo un perdido. A la droga me tiré, amigo mío, y a la cárcel fui llevado. Los amigos me olvidaron, solo mi madre lloraba. A Dios pedía y rogaba que se salvara su hijo. Recuerden lo que les digo, que en la prisión y en la cama solo nuestra madre nos ama, caramba. No hay dinero, no hay amigos, linda Guajira, mi son te llama.
Guajira, el son te llama a bailar, a gozar. Guajira, el son te llama a bailar, a gozar.
Aquaba, greetings, hello, obrigada. Thank you for joining us today for this week's episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a program sponsored each week, same time, same places, by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, as we gear up in July for our annual institution, Pan-African Women's Day. We commemorate today women freedom fighters in Africa. And we're thankful that you wanted to join us for this very critical topic. When Shakura was a young child, we used to play a game with her where we would give her information and we would ask her to name 5 African women or marginalized gender freedom fighters who were not born in the US. And the reason why we did that game with her is because those of us who live in the US, of course, you're conditioned relentlessly 24/7, 365 days a year, that the only thing that matters is the US. The only thing that matters about anything is what's happening in the US. And actually, very little that happens in the US matters as it relates to the world that we live in. So that was our humble effort to try and expand her thinking as well as ours, because we had to research the women and the marginalized gender folks that we shared with her, to understand that we are a worldwide people, and consequently we have freedom fighters all over the world. And so we continued to play that game, and it obviously evolved so that it's not a game, but it's more an understanding and appreciation of African women, marginalized gender, freedom fighters all over the world. So we're glad that you decided to join us for this topic today. We give thanks and honor to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere who were engaged in their fight. I was looking at a video last night of Russell Means, one of the leaders of the American Indian movement back in the 60s, 70s, so forth. And he was being interviewed, and the European interviewing him was asking him, well, what exactly do you want? And he said, we want to be free from America. And of course, the interviewer didn't understand anything about what that could mean. So he was like, but you're on the reservation. He's like, no, we want to be independent of the US empire. We want all of our lands back, and we want to be independent of the US empire because it's a racist settler colonial project that oppresses our people and all of humanity. And I thought that was an absolutely perfect response to address what indigenous people are fighting for. And I know that there's a reason why most of you probably have never heard of Russell Means, because they don't want you to hear that kind of analysis. But we support that, and we stand with our indigenous family members in their fight to get these lands back. And our African ancestors, of course, are the reason why we are here. I just finished a book I was reading and took a little break for about a week. And it was about how the U.S. empire propped up Mobutu Sese Seko in his plundering of the Congolese resources and his brutal oppression of the Congolese people from 1960 to 1965 until his forced leaving of the country of the Congo in 1997. So 37 years of this, and you wonder why there are problems in the Congo today. I mean, if you had problems in your life for 2 years, 1 year, it would take you your entire life to straighten that out. And so this is the reality that we're facing. And so, we just honor our ancestors, those that didn't make it through those struggles, those who stood up, the National Congolese Movement, Patrice Lumumba, those that stood up, our ancestors. The book talked about how the white mercenaries came to the Congo from Azania, or what they call by the colonial name, the apartheid South African state. They were hired by Mobutu to fight against the Lumumba's rebels after Lumumba was viciously murdered by Mobutu in the Central Intelligence Agency. And the book talked about the stiffest resistance that these white racist reactionaries faced were by the Congolese combatants who were trained by Che Guevara and the Cubans who came to the Congo to fight against these races. And so we think of our ancestors, and we don't just mean, we consider Che Guevara an ancestor. This man went to Africa and fought for us, and some of you want to criticize him, and you haven't hooted far enough to help African people ever in your life. So we honor our ancestors, our African ancestors, Patrice Lumumba, and the people that struggled in the Congo and were no longer with us because of their desire to see freedom come to our people. And we thank you for joining us, and we just introduce ourselves as we always do. For those that may not know, this is, again, Our Ancestors' Voices. It's a weekly program, same time each week. We've been doing it for 4 years now, going on 5 years, every week, by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the APRP. And the APRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass, Pan-African political party. It is based in Africa, and we have the objective of Pan-Africanism, which we define correctly as one unified socialist Africa. That's our fight. Our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, uniting all of the revolutionary Pan-African formations on the ground in Africa into one worldwide fighting force for African liberation. And we had one of our internal seminars this morning on the ideas of Amilcar Cabral, one of our ideologues. Our ideology in the APRP is Nkrumahism after Kwame Nkrumah, Touréism after Sékou Touré, and Cabralism after Amilcar Cabral. So today's seminar was on that, and we had, over 100 people from several countries around the world, members of the APRP, participating in a wonderful presentation by our comrade, siblings, organizer for the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, the PAIGC, the political party founded by Amilcar Cabral. And of course, if you paid any attention, Cabral also was a co-founder of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So that's our work. We're engaging in it, and Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my biological and ideological daughter. And as the screen says correctly, we're both active organizers within the APRP. So as is most appropriate to get us started on this important topic, African women freedom fighters in Africa, I'll turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you, kind sir. Appreciate you. Greetings, everyone. How exciting! Happy Pan-African Women's Day. Woo! We always really turn up for Pan-African Women's Day. We love PAW. We love our institutions that we celebrate within this organization, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, because many of the organizations and the institutions that we work with and the institutional routines and ways that we celebrate how we want to accomplish humanism, how we want to accomplish eradicating oppression, any type of dehumanization. These institutions allow us to be in that space where we can acknowledge the struggles that we've gone through, but also how far we have come and where it is we want to end up. And so understanding that we're in a good position here where we can literally celebrate femme presenting African folks who have given everything that they had for us, whether we knew them personally or not. And I love how Comrade Ajamu said, it's really important for us to think about the folks that we can name that were born outside of the US, because I think that's our biggest critique when we think about celebrating African History Month in the month of February is typically, because it's an American-centered institution, it tends to focus on Africans who were born in the diaspora without paying homage or acknowledging those who were obviously born on the continent and did so much to help change the conditions for Africans everywhere, right? So to me, it's kind of backwards to not acknowledge that when everything that we know, everything that has shifted us and has influenced us and has created who we are as a people, whether we were colonized or not, it's all stemming from Africa. So how could you not acknowledge the work that's being done on the continent? Because again, as Comrade Ajamu always says, the problem didn't start in the US. It started with the exploitation of people, resources, land, power, money, greed, opportunity, whatever that looks like. And so we start with acknowledging our comrade Mbalia Kamara. And we understand that this comrade was a devoted militant from the Democratic Party of Guinea, or what you may know as the PDG. Sister Mbalia was also identified as a peasant woman, and we define that as meaning that she made her money to feed her family by growing food off of the land and then selling that food herself. She became impressed with the work through the Democratic Party of Guinea so that she could help work with other organizers so that they could run France out of Guinea and its focus on Pan-African solution. And because of that, she became a reliable and consistent member. In 1957, the representatives of the neo-colonial regime, which was very loyal to France, by the way, threatened our comrade Mbalia and made it clear that if she did not stop the work that she was doing, she would be murdered, and the agents of imperialism would be at the hands of doing that murder. This did not stop our comrade. Comrade Mbalia continued, her spirit continued, and her determination lives forever. And so I want to point out a couple of things before I move to the next slide. We can include ourselves by thinking about how this comrade had the face of threat of murder taking place, and that did not stop this comrade. I would even argue that because this comrade was in an organization that's working for justice, which is what we always stress to you. And if you'll notice, the Democratic Party of Guinea is not the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And again, we never said that you had to join our organization. We just asked that you join some organization, any organization that you deem is working to change conditions for people and is helping to make conditions better for people. Any organization that is working for justice. That's all we ask. And so we give shout out to Comrade Mbalia because Mbalia understood that. This comrade understood the struggles and the hardship, literally identified within the peasantry class and sold food from the land that she grew it on. But she understood that there had to be more to that. And she also understood that the colonizers of France had a lot to do with her peasantry. So that probably drove her to make a decision that because I see this as being bigger than myself, I'm going to join the Democratic Party of Guinea because I want to make a change. I want to help contribute to changing the outcome for people in Guinea everywhere. And even when they threatened this comrade and said, we will kill you if you keep doing this work, this comrade continued on. And so we stress that for a couple of reasons, because I think a lot of us are so wrapped up in putting ourselves first and putting our needs first that we don't stop to really think about what the true benefits would be if we joined some organization that was working for justice. If you truly decided that today, whatever day of the week it is for you where you live, but today, right here, by the time this seminar is over, you are going to stop what you're doing. You're going to dedicate a constructed amount of time, and you're going to do some research on organizations that are working for justice. And maybe within a 3-day span, you're going to take some time to think about the research you've done, and then you're going to reach out to them and see what the process would be for you to attend a meeting or view a webinar that they have recorded. Join virtually if you can't make it in person, but don't allow any more excuses as to why you are not helping our people. If that truly has an impact on you, then you should be moved by Comrade Mbalia, and you should speak her name in every space that you can speak it in. The next time that people say that, non-male people aren't doing anything for Africans, you should say, no, 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 quite contrary, my friend, that is not true. You should speak to the fact that Comrade Mbalia was doing work for people that she didn't even know, because she understood that if one part of Africa is under attack, meaning Guinea, then the rest of Africa, as well as the people who descend from there, are also under attack. And again, I would argue that being in an organization working for justice, it causes you to think about someone other than yourself, which is so important, because that same drive is going to keep you motivated. It's going to keep you invested. It's going to keep your intention clear. It's going to keep reminding you of why you do what you do, because you're going to understand that when it gets difficult, when it gets tough, when you do get threats from the FBI, when you do have family members that disown you, when you do have situations where you don't know how to make sense of it because you lost your job and you don't understand why capitalism is not giving you an easier time, being in that organization is going to be one of the few movements in your life where it's going to allow you not only to make sense of all of the BS that you're dealing with under capitalism, but it's also going to remind you that there is something bigger than you. Other people are losing their jobs just like you are. Other people are dealing with hardship and pain just like you are. Other people have lost their family members because they've been organizing much longer than you have. You're going to be able to see past that because it's bigger than you. It's always been bigger than you. But capitalism has not taught you that. Capitalism has taught you that it's okay for you to put your needs first. It's okay for you to center your needs. It is okay for you to ignore the fact that even though you don't live in Guinea, you should still be doing something to resist French neocolonialism and, at the time, French colonization. That's what the system has taught you, is that you should not worry about anyone but yourself. And that's exactly the problem that we face today, because if that were really true, we would never have gotten anywhere in this world, because there were several African ancestors who clearly thought about other people when they made the decisions that they made. If all of them had decided that they didn't want to do anything because they didn't want to impact other people they didn't know, none of us would be in the space that we're in right now. We wouldn't have the advancements that we have. We wouldn't have the information that we have. We wouldn't have the knowledge that we have. We probably even wouldn't call ourselves African, for crying out loud, because all of them have paved the way for us. Don't you see? So because they understood that there was something bigger than them, it doesn't stop there. We still have to understand that as well. We still have to understand that there is something greater than us, because it's not about us. It's about changing the conditions so that we all can be free, really free, not living in a US imperialist world where capitalism is deciding and making all of your decisions for you, and where you're constantly under attack, and where you still don't have control of the resources on the continent. That's not freedom. That is not freedom. But you would know that if you were in an organization that was working for justice, specifically one that's doing the work on the continent. Then you would really start to get an understanding of that. So these are the things that we have to think about, and these are the things that we have to move forward with in terms of how we think about saying their names. It's totally okay for you to say Breonna Taylor. That is totally okay. But do not forget to say Mbalia Kamara as well. Because no offense to our comrade Breonna, we are thinking about you and your family, but there wouldn't be no Breonna Taylor had it not been for Mbalia Kamara. I promise you. Mbalia Kamara put Breonna on the map because Mbalia allowed us to start to shift how we think about prioritizing African women and African femme presenting marginalized genders. So we acknowledge our comrade Mbalia, and we understand that the sacrifices she made, the hardship, the pain, the dedication, the determination, like I said, the threats of having her life being taken, none of that could have been easy for her. And she still decided to put her people first. We have so much to learn from that. We have so much to learn from that. Next slide, please. We can also think of our comrade Andre Bouillon. And so this comrade was a very young woman who was born in Central Africa, or Central Africa Republic, I should say. And Comrade Andre became very interested in committing to Pan-Africanism at a very young age. This was still in their 20s when she decided to move to Guinea, and she actually became another member of the dedicated party of the Democratic Party of Guinea, the same organization that our comrade Kamara was in. And so in the late 50s, this is when Andre decided to join the Democratic Party of Guinea, and imperialism, once again, did everything that they could to impede on those efforts, to ruin those efforts, to tarnish and to just completely sabotage any efforts that our comrade tried to do. But Sister Bouillon moved to the Congo and actually became a personal advisor for Patrice Lumumba, a personal advisor for Patrice Lumumba. And so because of her actions, it literally almost costed her her life because imperialism made sure to assassinate Lumumba, and she had to escape out of the Congo to avoid being next, and as well as getting the target off her back. This was the only way that she could avoid being terrorized. And so, you know, when we think about how we get information and when we think about the source of knowing what the efforts were like for the national Congolese movement and Lumumba being sabotaged by imperialism, we have to understand that Comrade Andre, their contribution will live in our hearts forever. Because again, we're focusing today on African women and African femme presenting folks and marginalized genders who were doing this work to help us have a better way of life. And they were born outside of the US. And it's so important to focus on that because it also allows us to understand what other organizations exist outside of the US that maybe you should consider joining, especially if this is something that you're thinking about in terms of moving back to the continent or even paying a visit or just doing organizing work on the continent, right? Whatever that looks like for you. And so just thinking about Comrade Andre and how this was the opportunity for, again, you to understand that there's something bigger than yourself. If you've been organizing long enough, then you know at some point that the FBI, the CIA, all the other operatives that the US has put out, they have your information. They have your mailing address. They know your full name. They probably have your thumbprint at some point in your life. You've opted to give them that. They know what you look like. They have all the photo identifications that they have. I'm sure when you stop at the stoplight, the traffic cam scans your face and they able to know your exact location via GPS, via in the solar system. Like they have all of that information already. So that means they can have access to you in more ways than you know. This also means that they're in a better position to send you threatening messages, to make your life more difficult, to challenge you in other ways. But again, like if you've been organizing in enough time for you to understand Those things can happen, yes. And maybe in some cases they will be successful. We know that they were successful in other cases. So, yes, some of us may lose our lives in this work. But I'm still trying to push that it's bigger than us. I'm still trying to push that we don't do this work because we're worried about dying. We do this work because we want African people. We want poor people. We want poor colonized people. We want non-male people. We want differently abled people. We want other colonized people to have a better way of life. We don't want anyone to live in a world where they have to change who they are in any way, shape, or form, or be punished because they don't own their land. And so, because they don't own their land, they're not as powerful as everyone else. We don't want any of those situations to be the case anymore. We don't want people to be penalized because they don't identify as males. That's not their fault. They should still be equipped with power, and we should still value and cherish them because of the work that they have done, not just for humanity and for our people, but because we understand that they are just as valuable as males. And who are we to say that there's a discrepancy? That's part of the oppression that we need to wipe out. That's part of the ideology that we need to wipe out. We shouldn't even be discounting the fact that because they're not male, we should automatically treat them differently. Why? And why are we still tolerating that in this day and age where there has been so much work going on, where we have seen time and time again that African women, African femme, and marginalized folks have continuously stepped up to the plate? They have continuously put their lives on the line. They have continuously shown you their devotion, their dedication. They have done everything to change the realities for African people everywhere. And Nkrumah said it best. The degree of a country's political education can best be measured by the education of its women, which means we have always understood that how we offer our strategic thoughts, how we offer our sacrifices, how we offer our ability to do sometimes what other people can't do, that has always allowed us to be able to protect our people and to contribute in a way that other people just simply can't do. We don't have the same luxuries as other people. And I mean other male folks of different races. I mean other femme presenting and women folks of other races too. We have never had the luxuries of doing those things, but it's never stopped us just the same. We understand that our oppression is convoluted, but we still have decided to put our lives ahead of trying to change the conditions for people. Whether we were trying to stop ourselves from going through the point of no return, whether we were trying to stop ourselves when we were being pushed off a slave ship, whether we were trying to stop ourselves from giving birth because we didn't want our children to be born into enslavement. You can take your pick on how revolutionary we have always been and why we deserve to acknowledge what our folks have done, so we can think about our comrade Kamara, and we can think about our comrade Andre, and how without their dedication, without their membership, African people would not have been advanced as we are. But I would argue even the organizations that they chose to be a part of, the Democratic Party of Guinea, and even other organizations that maybe they were a part of that we didn't know about, or maybe them working with those other organizations in passing, how all of this has shifted just because of the choices that they've made to think about something bigger than themselves, to think about the fact that without them, we wouldn't even be able to sit here in this space right now. Because for one, we wouldn't be benefited by their courage and their bravery if they hadn't made the choices they made. But two, as I said, their involvement has literally shifted and changed the course of the timeline. It has literally shifted how we think about what it means to stand up and fight, what it means to resist, what it means to mention their names and to say their names, so that more people can start to be informed and aware of who they are and what they did for our people. And the best way that we can continue their legacy is to do just that, to share more information, to do more research, to find as much info as we can so that we can talk more about them. It's okay that we honor our comrade Patrice Lumumba, but we should say, did you know that his personal advisor, Andre Bouyen, she almost got shot too. She almost died too had she not left the Congo. They were out to get both of them. It's okay to pair those two together. What we need to stop doing is just focusing on one particular individual, because collectively, That's how we're going to change the course, and Africans will get their land back. Collectively, that's how Africa will become free once and for all. Collectively, that's how Africa will be able to achieve one unified socialist Africa. It's not going to happen just because of all the male people working to do it. It's not even going to happen because of all the women or femme presenting marginalized people. It's not going to happen because of all the non binary people. We have got to rely on one another. We have got to trust one another. We have got to learn how to trust one another. And I would argue that starts with joining an organization that's working for justice. If you're not ready to do that, then perhaps you can learn how to trust one another by supporting a Pan-African organization that's working for justice. Because this work is not cheap, especially under capitalism. So make sure that you all continue to say their names, do your part. And like I said, we challenge you to research, go shopping, if you will. What organization that's working for justice has piqued your interest? What organization are you interested in joining? Because we need you all, and time is of the essence. Ashe.
Ashe, obrigada. And just to drill down a little deeper to make these connections more plain for everyone, hopefully. When we talk about these two sisters, Sister Mbalia Kamara and Sister Andre Blouin, who are both members of the Democratic Party of Guinea, and the fact that Sister Andre was born in Central African Republic and then moved to Guinea-Conakry, joined the Democratic Party of Guinea, then moved to the Congo, joined the National Congolese Movement. This is a clear indication, you all, that we don't recognize these colonial borders. We know that, and this sister demonstrated this with her life, that Africa's freedom is a contribution that will benefit, as Shakur said, African people everywhere. And Sister Mbalia Kamara, one of the reasons she was inspired by the Democratic Party of Guinea is because of their Pan-African mission, not just their work in Guinea-Conakry in the country of Guinea, but their work for African people everywhere. And that it's important to recognize that because, you know, we honor women who come from these Pan-African organizations. And, you know, Shakur is right. The Democratic Party of Guinea is an organization in Guinea. The All-African People's Revolutionary Party is an organization all over the African world. But from our perspective, the Democratic Party of Guinea is Guinea's representation in the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. The African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau is Guinea-Bissau's representation. The Pan-Africanist Congress, the Zanian People's Organization, are the people of Azania, which you might call South Africa's representation, and so on and so forth. So that's what our work consists of. And even if we don't know that, the enemies of African people know that, because the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, they talked about the necessity to shut down the National Congolese Movement, shut down Patrice Lumumba and other militants like Maurice Impolo, and they were very concerned about Comrade Sister Andre Blouin. And they state in their documents, they're published, all you got to do is look at them, that they did not want this Pan-African work to spread across the African continent and the African world. And they understood clearly that the Democratic Party of Guinea, which produced both of those sisters we just talked about, was a critical component in spreading this Pan-African consciousness. Just a couple of years after that, Secretary and the Democratic Party of Guinea sponsored the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, in a delegation to Guinea-Conakry. And it was that, if you study the responses of that trip from some of the SNCC members, like John Lewis, the congressman who was the chairperson of SNCC at that time, Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, James Foreman, Ruby Doris Robinson. If you listen to what they talked about when they came back from Guinea, that was a primary contributor to moving SNCC in a much more militant position, which led to SNCC being the initial face of the U.S. Black Power movement. So Shakur is not just blowing smoke when she says that these Africans at home in Africa contributed to the African struggle for liberation all over the world. And so with that, I'll transition to the one exception we have today of an African woman who it was not born in Africa and is not living in Africa, but we think it's very appropriate that we honor Sister Fatima Barnawi, who was an African Palestinian woman who was born in occupied Palestine in 1939 to a father from Nigeria and a Palestinian mother. And if you know this history, you know that she was born in 1939. It was only 9 short years later that the state of Israel was declared, and the state of Palestine was no more. And so many of the people in Palestine never would accept this. Just as you wouldn't accept if someone came in your house and said, now it's my house, not your house anymore. I mean, if you have any dignity, you would never accept that. Well, they've never accepted that, even up through 2024. And recent events should be clear illustration to you of that. So Sister Fatima, she serves the distinction of being the first woman to carry out a military strike against the Zionist state of Israel in the late 1960s. And, you know, we don't want to hear nothing about, oh, she must have been what do they call them? A suicide bomber. She must have been, look, when people are oppressed, as Malcolm told us, they have every right to use whatever is at their disposal to alleviate that oppression. We don't want to hear nothing about no capitalist-inspired talking points about no suicide bombers. We don't have the military capacity that our enemies have because we haven't plundered the planet to create those military resources. So when we fight them, we have to fight with whatever we have available to us to do that. And that's what people like Sister Fatima did. And for that, she was arrested and convicted by the Zionist state of Israel. And she spent 30 years incarcerated in the state of Israel until she was released in the 90s. And she made her physical transition just a couple of years ago. But even though she wasn't born on the African continent, this is an African woman that was engaged in struggle against imperialism. And no matter where you live on the earth, when you strike a blow against imperialism, you are striking a blow to help the struggle of African people and all oppressed people all over the planet Earth. So we certainly give honor and respect to Sister Fatima Barnawi, African Palestinian woman, first woman to engage in military warfare against the Zionist state of Israel. And every blow that's taken against the Zionist state of Israel is taken in her honor. And for those of you who, you know, want to perpetuate this nonsense that, well, the Palestinian people, they don't care about our struggle. They were the ones who educated us about Sister Fatima Barnawi. But the reason why you wouldn't know that is because you're not engaged in any actual work. Instead, you know, people are just sitting around with these strange and underdeveloped opinions in their head and thinking that that's reality, where those of us who are out here on the street doing the work are coming across other activists of the same ilk that we are, and we share information because we know that the more we know about our struggle, the stronger we get, and the more we know about their struggle, the stronger we get, and they know that too. So they shared information with us about Sister Fatima. Understand that would help us strengthen our ties, right? This is why organization is so important. Because if you're not doing that work, you don't reach that level of consciousness. Like I was talking to some clown who was on social media on a page honoring Malcolm X, some European clown, buffoon clown, idiot. And I had posted about this event we're doing right now. And this idiot said, well, all you people do is complain about said the question is, why do all you do is complain about racism? I said, that's not the question. The question is, what the hell are you doing on a page honoring Malcolm X when you clearly know nothing about what Malcolm X represented? And then this clown wrote back Well, his own people killed him. And I said, so the way you're talking, I know that you're not in any organization. You're probably just you're just some white man sitting in a little hovel somewhere in filth, surrounded by filth, worried that your electricity is going to go out and you won't even be able to respond through the internet. And that's what you're angry about. And that's why you're coming on a page that has nothing to do with you and trying to comment. And then when I said that, all kind of Africans jumped on them. So I let it alone. But my point is that we know when people are engaged in this struggle, and we know when they're not. The way you talk will clearly illustrate within seconds whether you're on the ground doing work or whether you're just running your bumping your gums. We know this. So we want to raise up people like Sister Mbalia Kamara, Sister Andre Blue, and Sister Fatima Bernawi, and continue to do that by talking about our comrade Sister Elizabeth Sabeko. And Elizabeth Sabeko, along with her husband David Sabeko, they served as active participants in the Pan-African Congress of Azania, South Africa. And this is another Pan-African formation that we in the APRP are one with. And what we mean when we say that is we talked in the beginning every week about our strategy to achieve Pan-Africanism, uniting all of the revolutionary Pan-African formations on the ground. And the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania is without question one of those formations. And that's why we have members of the APRP who live in Azania who are also members of the Pan-Africanist Congress, so the PAC, as well as AZAPO. And the PAC and AZAPO are engaged in work to unify those two organizations. So this work is happening. But Sister Elizabeth was an earlier participant in the PAC in their struggle against the apartheid state, the racist apartheid state of then what was known as South Africa. And despite the fact that apartheid South Africa, with the assistance of the Central Intelligence Agency and the backward cesspool United Snakes of America, murdered her husband David during the 1970s. Despite that fact, Sister Elizabeth continued her work going around the world, having to leave her home country of Azania, or what they call South Africa, and continuing to work, traveling around Europe in the Western world. And in the 1980s, she participated we did fundraising activities for the PAC, and she came and spoke. We had a number of underground events. She stayed at our house for almost a week during the 1980s, and we did a number of fundraising events to raise money for the PAC. And yes, we were raising money for them to engage their armed struggle. I don't give a damn if they knock on my door right now. I'm going to tell the truth. Because if it happened tomorrow, we do the same damn thing. They're raising money to murder our people. We have every right to raise resources to fight back and stand on our dignity. And we are proud of that. We are proud that we had her at our house. And they come knocking on our door. So they're so damn dumb. Several weeks. I'm talking about the police. For those of you that are police that are listening, I want to make it clear. They had the nerve to knock on our damn door several weeks after she was already out of this country. Talking about, we have information that you might be harboring a fugitive. And we told them, Shakura's mom and I, well, we have information that you people been fugitives for 500 years. So where does that take us? We're not afraid of you. And the reason why we're not afraid is because we have revolutionary ideology and organization. And Sister Elizabeth Sabeko had that as well. I will never forget one of the events she was speaking to our youth in the 80s here in Sacramento, where I live. And people were asking her questions about Africa. And she told them that you cannot let these people infect you with crack and all of these things that are happening among our people in the 80s. And she told them, there is an African inside of you struggling to be free. And you have the responsibility to your ancestors to let that African out so that we can liberate our people all over the world in focus to liberating Africa, our national homeland. It was one of the proudest moments of my life to see these young inner city youth here in the U.S. understand and hear that message from a respected comrade who was struggling for liberation at home on the African continent. I will never forget Sister Elizabeth Sabeko for that. So she deserves to be continuously honored, and her spirit lives inside of each and every one of us today as we continue this fight. And we will move on and talk about Sister Teodora Gomez, who is still among us, still active, still militant, still a leading cadre organizer for the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, the PAIGC, as well as the General Union of the General Union of Guinea-Bissau Women, UDEMU, which is the women's wing of the PAIGC. And Sister Comrade Teodora joined the PAIGC at such a young age and became a leading military combatant. She engaged in military warfare against the colonists from Portugal who had colonized Guinea-Bissau and played a significant role in running them out of Guinea-Bissau, and continues to this day in her mid-80s to be an active organizer and leader within the PAIGC. And she gave the opening address at the first All-African People's Revolutionary Party Congress, which was held in Guinea-Bissau in January of 2023. And I was so humbled and honored to be a voted delegate that participated in that party Congress. And Sister Teodora told us in that opening address, and you see the picture on your screen, a number of our comrades there from Guinea-Bissau, a number of comrades, one African on the end. Brother Tremble is in the Pan-Africanist Congress in Azania, as well as the APRP. He has the PAC logo on his shirt. Brother Sabukwe on the far left is organizing for the APRP in Kenya. And some of the two sisters flanking Sister Teodora are members of the PAIGC in Guinea-Bissau, UDEMU in Guinea-Bissau, as well as the All-African People's Revolutionary Party and the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union. And we have Brother Imani in the back, a Central Committee member for the PAIGC in Guinea-Bissau, as well as a Central Committee member for the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, and myself standing directly behind Sister Teodora and good comrade brothers Akabundu and Zizwe, who are also members of this U.S. slime cesspool chapter that we have here in this backward-ass country that we're trying to use. Somebody asked me, the white man that I mentioned, they asked me, why are you still here? I'm like, you spent 500 years stealing everything we got. So don't ask us why we're here to get our resources back and send you back to caveman times. Once we liberate all that you've stolen from us, send you back to caveman times. So the only option you got, I told them, is to get a goddamn raft and raft your way back to Europe and get out of our way, because you're not going to stop us. So this is the work that we're engaged in. And Sister Teodora was it was not a dry eye in the place. And we gave a workshop. You go back to January, you look at our YouTube page, AAPRP CA, and you can go back to January and see the report back from the Party Congress that I did and talked in much more detail about Sister Teodora and the impact that she had on us. It was one of my dreams to meet her when I went to Guinea-Bissau back in January of last year. And Shakura had asked me, well, if you get a chance, we talked about it. If you get a chance to meet her, please take a picture with her. That's why we have the picture there. And I'll tell you the story really quickly, because there's a book called Fighting Two Colonialisms by Stephanie Erdang, Urdang. And she talks about Guinea-Bissau's liberation struggle and the role of UDEMU, the women's wing of the PAIGC, in fighting against the Portuguese in Guinea-Bissau. You should read that book. Sister Teodora Gomez is heavily featured in that book. And that's how I came to know her back in the 1980s. So when I went there last year, I really wanted to have the opportunity to meet her. I knew we would be, we were hosted by the PAIGC, so I thought there would be a chance, but I didn't know for sure. And when we walked in the room to have lunch, she was sitting there. And some of you, like if you walk in a room and you see Suge Knight or Snoop Dogg or some of these other scum that are celebrities in this backward ass country, you'll get all excited about that. If you see LeBron James or somebody like that or Barack Obama, you get all excited. But I don't give a damn. If I see any of them people, I'm walking the other way. But when I see someone who has contributed their life for our people's liberation, I feel at that moment the way you feel when you see these worthless ass celebrities. So when I walked in the room and I saw Sister Theodora sitting there at the table, I almost burst into tears, because this is a woman that my entire life has inspired me. And I'm like, I'm going to get a chance to meet her. And she was there, and we sat down and we ate lunch, and I told her, like, if I don't get a picture of you, I'm not going to be able to talk to my daughter again. And she said, well, the first thing we got to do before we eat is take that picture. And so that's where this picture came from. So when we say that we're standing on the shoulders of legendary people, you all, we're not exaggerating. This is our legacy as African people. Our legacy is so much larger than what you learn in this backward cesspool country. That's why you got to increase your consciousness beyond these borders. You will never know anything if the only thing you know is what's happening here. Because there's nothing happening here. This is a cesspool. So we just want to summarize this. There's so many women and marginalized gender folks that we can honor. So many. And we will do a show in the near future where maybe we just focused on the marginalized gender folks. But the important thing today is that when we talk about these type of African women, Sister Theodora, Sister Andre, Sister Imbalia, Sister Elizabeth, Sister Fatima, we are talking about people who are the reason that we have the dignity that we have today. Shakura couldn't have stated that any more clear. They are the spigots that give you every bit of resistance that you have today, whether you know it or not. That's where it comes from the live contributions of people like these African women that we are talking to you about today. And at some point, those of us who are here having this conversation today, we won't be here in our physical form. So the only question that matters is, what will people say about you once you're gone? What will people say about you when you're older and once you're gone? What will be your legacy that you will leave? Well, you had a Cadillac, you had a Tesla. That's not a legacy. That nobody will even know that you had those things, because as soon as you die, somebody's going to take them so that they can benefit from them. So that you're not even attached to those things the way that you think you are. You're not even attached to them. Your legacy is, what do people have to say about you when you're no longer here? Any of you that go to funerals, everybody gets up. They always have a portion of the funeral where people can get up and talk about the person who has made their physical transition. And I guarantee you, all of these sisters, and thank goodness, Sister Theodora is still among us, and I hope she outlives me. But all of these other sisters that we talked about that are no longer in their physical form, I assure you that when they had their celebration services of their lives, they had to cut people off from talking about how inspired they were by these women and the contribution that they're made. So that's the question for each and every one of you. What are people going to say when you make your physical transition? Because if you go to any funerals, when people get up to do that, they don't talk about, well, he had the greatest house. He had a 5-bedroom house. It was the best thing about him was his house. Nobody talks like that. He had 5 cars. Nobody talks like he had money in the bank. Nobody gives a damn. The people that get up and talk about you when you made your physical transition are people who you inspired with your life. And in order to inspire people, you have to do something that helps them see the necessity to contribute and be a part of this life. Because there's so much that happens every day that wants to convince us that we should have no desire to continue with this. And so the people who engage in activity that helps us understand the reason why we're here, that's what people talk about when they get up at celebratory life celebrations. They talk about how people help them learn what it means to become a human being. So that's the question that you have to ask yourself is, what are people going to say about you? The legacy of these sisters is ingrained in history. Nobody, the imperialists can say whatever the hell they want to say about them. They're never going to be able to extinguish their fire and to tarnish their images. So that's because of the vast degree of work that they've done. Of all these women here, these 5 women that we've honored, I've had the privilege and honor to meet 2 of them in person. And I've had the privilege and honor to study all of them my entire life. And I can tell you that I would not be the same person I am without them. And so that's the question that all of us have to ask ourselves. What kind of legacy will we leave when we're no longer physically here? That's the only thing that matters, because you can't take anything with you when you make your physical transition. You can spend all your life acquiring whatever the hell you want to acquire, but the minute that breath leaves your body, you can't take any of that stuff with you. The only thing you take with you is your legacy. And the reason why we're talking about these women, some of them that have been dead for decades, is because of that legacy. And that's the question that each of us has to ask ourselves. And we want to thank you for joining us today and coming here. And we want to invite you back next Sunday, July 21st. We're going to talk about key points of clarity about solidarity. This is such an important question. Solidarity, when we say that, what we mean is work to unite our movement with other people's movements. So what we're going to talk about next week is when we say we need international solidarity, we're not saying that anything is lessened in our focus on the African liberation movement. Nothing. We're not saying that we can celebrate any people who don't celebrate us. What we are saying is that international solidarity is an important ingredient in strengthening all of our movements against the common enemies that we face, right? If a man kidnaps you and takes you in a cave, and you find out when you get in the cave that there are other people in the cave, you may not know them, you've never seen them before, you have 2 options. You can either sit down with them and develop a strategy so that all of you can escape together, or you can sit there and act like you're too good to talk to them, or you're hurt because of what you perceive them or people like them having done to you before, and you stay your ass right in that cave until he kills each and every one of you off. So this is what we're going to be talking about next week when we talk about key points of clarity about international solidarity. And we want to invite you to put on your calendar Pan-African Women's Day. We'll have an international program, a webcast on, I believe it's July 28th of this month. And then there'll be many local programs throughout the world, all throughout the African world, that we're holding in honor of Pan-African Women's Day. So we want to plug you in because we have to have our own institutions. These are our institutions. The capitalists have they just had one last week, the 4th of July. That's their institution. They want to, many of you Negroes out there will have a good 4th, and you were enslaved picking cotton on July 4th, 1776. But because they've conditioned you so hard and so effectively, you sitting there talking about have a good 4th. Enjoy your 4th. It was a brother at right before that at the fireworks stand. He's selling fireworks, talking to me, if you need any fireworks. I'm like, brother, I don't do fireworks. I mean, I know you're trying to make some money, but you got to understand, like, all of us are not going for that scam. He's like, I hear you. I'm just trying to make some money. I'm like, I know that. That's why I said that. I know you can't be that dumb that you think that that's something that represents us. You look like you're educated enough. He's like, no, I'm just trying to make money for my church. I'm like, I'm not mad at that. If you're honest, that's all it is. I said, so next time you see me, come to me like that. And I gave him a little donation. I'm like, I'll help you with what you're doing. I'm not buying no goddamn fireworks. I mean, you out of your mind. You don't, you'll probably do better approaching our people with that honesty than you will with all that nonsense. So the upper left-hand corner QR code, you can go there. You get information on the Forward Ever shop. Please do it. Please buy clothes that have revolutionary messages on them. Support the All African People's Revolutionary Party's work by doing that. Hood Communist is in that QR code as well. You want that Revolutionary African blog. We talked about Pan-African Women's Day. You can get more information about that at our website, www.aprp-intl.org. And you should go there to join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And you should support the APRP. You can do that at Venmo at A-APRP or PayPal at AAPRP, no dashes. Contribute what you can, because if you don't, no one else will. And the bottom right is one of the projects that we have going on in Burkina Faso, the Thomas Sankara Center for Liberation and Pan-African Unity. Please support that, become a monthly sponsor through Patreon, and that'll help with the resources that are being accumulated there to help our people build revolutionary Pan-African institutions in Burkina Faso. And then please continue to buy my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. You can only get it through Amazon. Please miss me with this analysis about, I understand better than you. Amazon is a vicious capitalist country, but I don't have a printing press and I can't afford to send books all over the world. So I publish through them and they do all that. And so I'm using their resources to overthrow the system that they support. And there is nothing wrong with that. So we use the resources from the sale of this book to do our anti-fascist work. And if you don't know what that means when some Klansmen or neo-Nazis, they had, 2,000 of them in Nashville marching last week, and Africans were sitting in the restaurant filming them with their phones. If they would have gone in the restaurant and beat the hell out of them Africans, the Africans would have had no plan for how to defend themselves. And sitting there filming, talking about, I can't believe it. You better wake up and believe it. This is the reality that we're living with. And some of us are trying to organize to defend us. So buy my book so we can continue to do that work. We appreciate you. Forward ever, backwards never. Enjoy the rest of your day.